All right, so the first question here talks about random number generator, and we are told we do a Python program that uses the random module to generate a list of 10 random integers. Again, this is between 1 and 100. Then shuffle the list. All right, so again, this is the random module. So we are going to talk about import random. All right. Then we said to generate some random numbers. How do we do that? We talk about random dot rand int. Okay. Then we give the range. So the question gives us the range between 1 and 100. So we have 1 and 100. All right. So what will happen is that this will give us one random integer. So if we just assign that to x and print x, so this will give us one random integer. All right. And again, we need to generate 10. All right. So there are quite a number of things that we can do to have 10. So this being one, we can, for instance, we can come up with an empty list here. Call it random nums. All right. Then we do a for loop for I in a range. I hope we all remember how to do the range, how to make use of the range. Let's talk about 10. Okay. Then we need to execute this. All right. So after every iteration, we have a random number generated. Okay. So what do we do with this random number? We can append it to our empty list that we defined here. So we have random nums dot append, then append whatever random number that is generated there. All right. Then after that is complete, we can then print the random number here. That is random nums. Let's see. All right. So we have a list of 10 random numbers. And again, if we execute that again, we see again we have a list of another set of random numbers. All right. Then remember how to reshuffle, how we can reshuffle this. We just need to call random dot shuffle, rather not reshuffle. Should be random dot shuffle. All right. So before the shuffle happens, so basically random dot, we are not supposed to print random dot shuffle. This should do it in place. So all we need to do is to print random nums. All right. So we can do that before the shuffle happens. So let's talk about print. Then we have random nums. So we print before the shuffle happens, then we do the shuffling, then print it again. Let's see if that works. All right. So if we do it again, you see starting with 80, but this one starts with 14. All right. So that's one of the approach that we can give to this question. All right. So the next approach that we can give the same question, probably to reduce the number of lines that we have, we can talk about import random. All right. So again, to generate the random numbers, random nums, we can talk about random dot rand int. Then we give the range. All right. Once we give the range, then we want to still make use of the for loop, but in this same line. All right. So we are going to have this in a list. All right. Then inside here, we talk about for. It's a common practice to use the underscore in such a case. Then we can talk about range 10 because we want to have 10 elements within this list, or rather 10 random numbers generated by this. All right. So in that case, we can proceed and print random nums. All right. So if we do that, we get that list. So again, this simplifies what we had here. So no need to declare an empty list and the two lines that we have here. All right. So then the next thing here is doing random dot shuffle, then shuffling random nums. All right, so it should be as simple as that. So in here, you're free to use whichever approach that you feel is easy to use. So question number 2 requires us to develop a script that uses the OS module to list all the files in a directory and display their sizes in bytes. All right, so all you need to do is to make use of the OS module. So for the OS module, we are going to talk about OS. So this is a module that helps interact with the file system. Okay, so in here we need to develop a script that we use the OS module to list all the files in a directory and display their sizes. All right, so we need to define the directory. Okay, so for instance, the current directory, we can define the current directory and say directory is equals to, so you can either provide the absolute path or just a dot. All right, so this dot, when talking about the file system, refers to the current location where this script is being executed. Okay, then we need to loop through the files within this directory. Okay, so we are going to talk about for. So we have been using for I in, but for now, let's use a name that makes sense in our use case for file name in. So the OS module that is used to list the directories in the given path, we have os dot list dir. All right, then provide the directory. Okay, so in this case we want to make use of the current directory. Okay, all right, so we have for file name in the os dot list directory and provide the current path. Okay, then we can have let's define, we define another variable that will join the path and the file name. All right, so remember, for instance, let me show you something here. So for instance, I have this greetings.py file. Okay, so the path to this file, for now this is not really Python related, whatever I'm doing down here. So the location of this particular file is in home, Danny, desktop, Python trainings, then the name of that file. Okay, so the next line here that I want to share provides or captures the absolute path to the files in the current directory or in the directory that we want to do the listing here. Okay, so this is how to do it. We define file path. All right, then we still make use of the OS module, and that is os.path.join. Okay, so what do we want to join? We want to join the directory, the one that we defined here, and the file name, the file that is available in the directory that we are dealing with. So we have the directory and file name. All right, so once we do that, then we proceed to check if the path here is a file. Okay, because remember, from the instruction given on this question, we are to list all files in the directory that we select. All right, so we are going to do if os dot path, then we check if is file. There should be some is file. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. All right, then I pass in the file path. If that is file, then we need to print it, because again, we just want to print the files under the given directory. Okay, so I'll talk about we can print. So I'll do some formatting here. All right, then I'll do that and print the file name. So this is the file name in question. In case we, so in the current path, we have, let's call them objects. We have files and folders. All right. So we kind of get the absolute path by doing this. Okay. Then we proceed to check if whatever has been captured in the file path, if it's a file, then we proceed and print the file name and the size. All right. So again, to get the size, we need to talk about os dot path dot get size. Then what are we getting the size for? The file path. There's a file path. Yes. And by default, this gives the size in bytes. I think this should be in bytes. All right. So this is how the script should look like. So let me execute my script here and do ns. So see, we have a file named text.txt. We have it here. We have hello.py. This is what we have. Math operations, and all these other files. All right, alongside the size of each and every file. Okay, so that's the OS module at work. Okay, all right. So another question here, we have math operations. We are required to create a Python program that uses the math module to calculate the area of a circle given its radius. All right, so we have the radius is equals to 14. It could be centimeters, kilometers, or meters, or whatever measure that is in use. All right, so the math module, we need to import the math module. Remember, I think we did a number of examples in this. So we simply have import math. Okay, then we have the radius. The way we used to define the area, we have area is equals to, we used to talk about pi r squared. Okay, so we can have pi times r squared. All right, so okay, we need now to capture the area, which again is equals to pi. So we can talk about math.pi. Okay, so this will give us the 3.142 and all that. All right, then we multiply by radius. Okay, so this is radius squared, so we can talk about radius squared. So that's how to square a number. You make use of the double asterisk signs. All right, okay, so this is one way. So let me have print area. If we execute this, we see we have that. All right, so better still, we can still make use of the math module. Remember, we can talk about math.py. All right, times, do you remember how we were powering numbers? That is, we can have 10 power 2, 3 power 5. So by still making use of the math module, we can talk about math.power, POW. All right, so we have the radius raised to power 2. So in that case, we just have to mention radius comma 2. So that will be radius squared, or radius raised to power 2, or exactly what we have here. All right, so if we execute this, we should get the same output here. All right, and again, that is what is expected of us in that question. Number 4 here. So we are supposed uh, to write a script that uses the datetime module to display the current date and time in that format. All right, so again, we have a module, a datetime module. Okay, and the good thing is that we have a topic set aside so that we can talk a little more about the datetime module. Okay, It's a data type that we never mentioned, but it's another crucial data type. All right. So we have them. We have date type, and we have been talking about import date time. Okay. So we might do it slightly different for this case, but let's see where the difference comes in. Okay. So to get the current date time, okay, we can talk about, for instance, let me talk about now is equals to date time. Okay, so in the date time, there is a method called date time again. Okay, so from that, we then have now. Okay, that will return the current time. Okay, so if we do that, we get the date and the time. Okay, but then the question instructs us on a special way on how to return that. So we need to do something about it. So we can directly print that. So that is now. We have another method that we do make use of called strf time. Okay, so we do that. Then we put in the format that we would want to have this time being displayed. Okay, so the way to do it, we have %y. Okay, we have %m for month. Then we can have %d for the day. Have some space. Have capital H, another capital M, another capital S. All right, so that should be able to convert the current time to the desired format. All right, so back to this question here. We see that in here we are talking about datetime dot datetime, okay, which again might cause some confusion. Again, if you are to call this 100 times in your code, it might not be necessary. We can do better than this. Okay, so the way to do that, we can slightly change the way we are importing the module, and instead of importing all the methods within the module here, we can specifically import what we want to use. And the way to do that, we say from datetime import datetime. All right, and then when it comes to talking about now, we have to talk about now is equals to datetime dot now. So we do not need to have datetime dot now. Okay, so we can simply have what we have here. Okay, then if we execute that, we should get the same thing. Let's move on to the next question here that requires us to make use of NumPy, the NumPy module, and we are told to develop a Python script that uses the NumPy library to create two arrays and perform element-wise addition and multiplication. All right. So, okay, so this is NumPy, and as I mentioned, just spare some time, see what NumPy has for us, even if you are not too major with data. So let's talk about NumPy. All right, and it's a common practice to import NumPy as NP so that we can make use of these abbreviation instead of typing in NumPy. All right, so to declare an array, we are going to have X. All right, and we have NumPy, that is NP dot. We can have array. Okay, then in here we pass in a list. Okay, so we can pass in some few numbers. Let's do the same to y np dot array. Okay, then we pass in another list. Okay, and in this case you will discover that for most of these operations they have to be of the same length. All right, we are going to test that. So when it comes to addition, we need to do some two operations. One of them is addition. So let me talk about print. I can talk about addition. All right. So then I can talk about, let me just talk about x plus y. That should give us the sum of the two NumPy arrays. All right. So basically what happens is that addition will happen element wise. Okay. So the element on index 1 in y will be added to index 1 on x, same as second, third, and all that. All right. And that is for addition. So in case by any chance one of the arrays is of different length, try to do the addition, you get an error because the shape is not the same. All right. So they need to be of the same shape. All right. Again, when it comes to multiplication. Okay. Again, let's talk about x times y. We have it there. We execute. We see multiplication here. So the same thing happens. Like the first index here will be multiplied by the first index here, second, third, and or that. All right. So that again is for multiplication. Let's move on to the next question. Custom modules. So create a custom module named calculator.py with the functions for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Then import and use this module in another script. Okay, so we have already done this in our previous session. So we are going to create a new file here. So remember, in case you are making use of VS Code, new file, have the name. All right. So creating a custom module is basically creating these functions. So we are going to create the 4 functions here. All right, so again, these are just functions. So I'll talk about define. Remember how we define functions. All right, then I'll talk about define addition. Okay, then I pass in some parameters. I hope we haven't forgotten how to go about creating a function. Okay, then we can talk about return x plus y. Should be as simple as that for addition. For subtraction, define, then give your function a name. Okay, then because our function will require some parameters, let's talk about x and y. Okay, and we do return x minus y. Okay, so the same thing for multiplication. So define multiplication x y. Okay, then we need to return x times y. All right, and finally we have division. Define division, then we have x comma y. All right, and remember the way we are calling these parameters, you are free to make use of different names. You don't necessarily need to use x and y. Okay, so these are just kind of variable names, so you are free to use other names as well. All right, then in here we can simply return x divided by y. Okay, but then remember we said that there is a disclaimer. Okay, because you may end up having to divide a number by 0. So in case that happens, you'll get an error. So the best thing to have is to first of all check if y is not equals to 0, then return that. Okay, so in here I need to just give a message. No division by 0. So we created a module that has some 4 functions. Then we want to make use of that module in our main file here. Okay, so the way to make use of that, we said we are going to talk about import, then talk about the file name. All right, so we import, then mention the file name. All right, so this is one of the approach. Okay, then we want to make use of, say, the addition. Okay, so remember, now we need to make use of the print statement, and of course, no harm, we would still have made use of the print statement here for now. Okay, so we said in case you do make use of the return statement here, then you need to print when calling that function. All right, but then in this case, we are making use of these functions as modules. Okay, so we are going to say print. Okay, so we are going to say print. We have calculator dot addition. Okay, but then our function requires us to pass in some parameters. All right, so the same way as we are making use of that module, we need to pass in some parameters here, and we are expected to pass in 2. Okay, so we have 2 and 4. And of course, these are just random numbers that I'm passing in to test our module. Okay, so in case we do that, you see 6, which again, if you add 4 and 2, you get 6. All right, that is for addition. In case we want to have subtraction, let's talk about calculator dot subtraction. Then we have, say, 7 and 3. Okay, so we are kind of talking about 7 minus 3. So again, if we print this, let me comment this one out, execute my script here, and we see we have 4. All right, that's basically 7 minus 3. So that's for subtraction. Let's move on to addition. If we print that, we have to talk about calculator dot. We have multiplication. We are multiplying two numbers, 6 and 2. All right, if you execute that, you get 12. All right, that is 6 times 2. And finally, we can do division. We have calculator dot division. Okay, again, we would want to do 4 divided by 0. Okay, let's see if we are going to get that custom message. Print that. Okay, what did I do? All right, still okay. So in case we execute our program here, we get no division by 0. So let me see. So it's because I talked of print here. That's why we get no division by 0 and none. Okay, so I can do return that, so that once I execute my script again, I should simply get no division by 0. Okay, but then I can change 0 to 2. So we are talking about 4 divided by 2. We have 2. All right, so again, that's how to create custom modules. There is another approach. Okay, we said that you might not always necessarily need to print or to have calculator. Well, we have seen you can import calculator as calc. All right, so instead of what we have here, we can simply make use of calc here. All right, and I believe that should give us the same output. All right, alternatively, that's another approach. Alternatively, we can talk about from calculator we want to import addition as add. Okay, so let's see if this gives us something that we can be happy about. So again, we can talk about add 2 and 4. If you do that, we see 6. So just tweak whatever you have and relate with what we have already covered. All right, again, if you talked about from calculator import addition, then we would have had addition here. But then we have decided because addition has so many characters, we can simply have add instead of addition. So still usable. So we are required to this dependency management. What is the purpose of a requirements.txt file? Okay, and then we are told to create a requirement.txt file for a project that requires requests, NumPy, and pandas library. All right. So we have already talked about the requirement.txt file, and we said that this file will list the dependencies of the project in question. All right. And we have also said that in case you received a project that has requirement.txt file, you just need one command to go about installing all the dependencies. All right. So I'll talk about, so back to the question. So the question requires us to create a requirement.txt file um, and add some libraries here. Okay, so simply what we need to do, we create a file. Remember how we created the file here using this button. Okay, then give it requirements.txt. Then for now I'll paste in those dependencies here as the question requires. All right, so I'll do that. And remove that. Okay, so your requirement.txt file should look like this. Alternatively, if in case you had been given specific versions, then you would have passed them in here. And of course, remember, we make use of the equal sign. All right, but for now, as it is, it's good enough. And that is again what was required of us in that question. All right. Then finally, we have a question here about virtual environment, requiring us to create a virtual environment for a project and install Flask library. Then write a simple Flask application to display hello world when run. All right. All right. So again, let's see how to go about that. So the question here requires us to create virtual environment. All right. So let me create one. I'll talk of Python. So it's either Python or Python 3 -m. Okay. Then I have venv. All right. Then I have my venv. All right. Then press enter. All right. So depending with the name that you want to give your virtual environment, you can adjust this to whatever name that you prefer. All right. So after doing that, we proceed and activate our virtual environment. So as I said, in my case, I'll talk about source, my venv, bin, activate. So in your case, talk about my venv backslash script backslash activate. All right. So that is for those on Windows, make use of what you have here. For those on Linux or Mac, this is what to use. All right. So once you do that, we have created and activated the virtual environment. We then need to install pip install Flask. All right. So let's install Flask on our environment. So basically, Flask is a Python framework mainly used to develop backend for websites. All right. So once that dependency is installed, so I should cross all here. Then I can create a simple application here. So I'll create a file, name it app.py. Okay, so this is our Flask application here. Then let's get the code from the Flask documentation. Let me see about the quick start. So for those who will take the web journey, you can explore this further. So I just need to copy that, come in here, paste it here. So at least you're able to appreciate what we have here from Flask, import Flask. Okay, then we define an app there and proceed to give the routing. All right, so the question required us to, let me see the question, write a simple Flask application that displays hello world. All right, so all right, hello world, we have hello world there. All right, so let me try to execute our program here. So you have Python, then app.py. Okay, all right, so that doesn't run. So okay, let me add another line here that I think okay, let me add another line here that I believe is necessary. All right, so let's see if it will behave. Okay, all right, so again, once you execute that, you get a local server here that you should make use of. If I copy this and open here, then we see the hello world that we were required to display. All right, so don't worry so much about the syntax here. This is for the Flask framework, but at least you can be able to appreciate a few concepts here. All right, see, we have import, we have the function and return and all that. All right, and that marks the end of our topic number 5. All right, that was talking about Python libraries and modules.